thing in a long time. So, I don't know if it's recording yet, but I'll try to kind of consolidate what I was gonna talk about in this video. It's May. It's like the middle of May. I think it's like the 12th or the 13th. Let me look. Yeah, it's the morning of the 13th. It's Saturday. And I've been thinking about things for about a week or two, just reevaluating a lot of how I'm living my life and what I want my life to look like and stuff like that. I don't know. I've been thinking about this whole idea that I have an illness that needs to be medicated for the rest of my life. And I don't like the fact that people think that you can't recover from these type of things. Like, once your mind is broken, it's always going to be broken. And you have a chemical imbalance and there's no way to fix it but by taking your medications. And I really feel like there should be some other option. There should be some other out that says, maybe you're not. Maybe you dealt with your shit. Maybe you cleaned house. Maybe you dealt with whatever was traumatizing you or triggering you or whatever. But yeah, I'm gonna take my glasses off because they're reflecting my screen. But anyway, I just think it's one of those things where the only thing that you can really do at one point or another is be honest and say, hey, I watched this video about the psychiatric industry and how much billions and trillions of dollars they're making on the sale of psychiatric drugs. And the whole industry is toting this biological model of mental illness that says you can't ever get better. And I don't believe that bullshit. That's the party line and I don't buy it. I never really have. I've always kind of been like, well, what happened to me was more of a, hello, I needed to break out of my shell and understand some things about myself, and I didn't have any help at the time, nor did I have a support system that was viable. And it's one of those things where it's like, when you need help, you need to be able to ask for it from the right people. And I needed help and didn't know who to ask. That was the big thing, is that I needed help and I didn't know who to ask. I was dealing with trauma and depression and anxiety and things that were going on in my head that I didn't know how to handle, and I didn't know who to ask for help. And I just figured, life was always going to be this way because I'm a bad person and I deserve nothing but crap, blah, 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 blah. Those inner tapes that play that make you feel like a shitty person? Well, I don't know. I can't make that judgment of myself anymore. I can't say I'm just a bad person and deserve nothing. Because I do. We all are taken care of by providence. We all go through some stuff, but we're all taken care of by God. God takes care of us. I mean, that's been my experience anyway. And I do feel bad for the people that fall through the cracks. I mean, my brother, before he passed, he was one of those people that was always falling through the cracks. And, he didn't have a place to rest his head for a while, so he was coming over here and we were hanging out and getting to know each other and stuff like that. And, I just feel like my life shouldn't be summed up as, oh well, between this date and this date he was crazy or mentally handicapped or mentally ill or whatever. Like, I don't think you can fit into a box like that. I don't think you should have to. It's really disempowering to let the psychiatric industry control your life. It's not cool. I mean, yeah, there's people that have persecutory voices or paranoia or other forms of things that are going on in their head that aren't necessarily based in reality, but they have to deal with them like their reality because their mind has convinced them this is the reality. And I don't think reality is that, like, I don't believe reality is that subjective or objective. I don't believe in consensus reality, period, anyway. Because we all make our own decisions about how we view the world. And worldview has a lot to do with how we experience our lives and what we go through. And yeah, I've been through the ringer a few times. I spent from the age of 12 to the age of 18, I spent in the foster system being a ward of the state. Basically, I wasn't technically a ward because technically my parents, my adopted parents, the people who adopted me when I was 3, they still had, control over where I lived and whatnot and stuff like that. But towards the end of my teenage years, I realized they didn't want me. They didn't want me back in their lives. They didn't want me, period. And I think that's something they realized when I was 12. They just realized that they couldn't take care of me. And once they realized that, they no longer wanted me in their life. That's the only conclusion I can draw from it, really. And that experience of abandonment was horrible. I felt like I had nobody. I felt like I was persona non grata. It was disempowering. It was dehumanizing. It was, anything that looked wrong with that picture was probably wrong, And yeah, there's a point where I have to own my own shit and say, yeah, I had a lot of shit going on, a lot of behavioral issues, a lot of stuff like that that made me very hard to raise, very hard to handle, very hard to control. But at the same time, I was just a child. And I don't think you should throw children away. And I felt like I was thrown away. And nowadays it's like, well, how do I live with the fact that society has basically medicated me and released me back into the wild and said, go fuck yourself. That's basically it. I do have my support system now, but at the same time, it could fall apart any time. One person leaves, another person comes into the picture. I don't have, like, a stable circle of friends where, I can go to one or two of them and just be myself, talk frankly about my issues, and try to come to some resolution on whatever I'm working on, whatever's going through my head. It's just not in the picture for me. And of course, they call me names. They call me schizoaffective disorder. They call me bipolar, whatever. They call me obesity. They call me diabetic. All these different health conditions of the body-mind system that basically Yeah, I mean, I consented to it in a way. I consented to it in a sense because of what I was eating, what I was ingesting, what I was taking into my body, whether it was psychotropic drugs or pizza or whatever. I mean, I shaped who I am today, and I'm realizing that I don't like the shape I'm in. I don't like the fact that I have type 2 diabetes now because of hereditary reasons and also medicational reasons. Um, I just, I'm sick of being sick. I'm sick of being not well. I'm sick of not feeling good. I'm sick of so many different things. I'm sick of living a life of quiet desperation. I'm sick of it. I can't do it anymore. And people are always like, "Oh, you're so kind, you're a good listener, you're nice, you don't talk badly about people or whatever. And I talk badly about people. I just don't do it where they can hear me. Ha ha ha. Yeah. But generally, I think like I've come to the point of, I realize what's important in my life, and I realize what's not important. And I was watching Valerie Love talk about what spirituality is, and she talks about it as not getting something or acquiring something or learning something, but letting everything that isn't spirit fall away. And when I think about that, I think, wow, this layer of fat I have on my body, that's not spirit. The health conditions I have, that's not spirit. Um, the medications I have to take, that's not spirit. I just feel trapped by this life. And I feel stuck in an illusion, and I feel like I'm in a house of mirrors, and I mean, one mirror makes you look fat, one mirror makes you look skinny, whatever. One mirror stretches you out to no, to no end or whatever. And I'm just sick of the house of mirrors. I want to break them all. I want to take a bat to them and break them. Um, and I suppose there's something to be said for a person that can't deal with their own reflection. And there's various reasons for that, I suppose. But I want to be happy. I want to live a joyful life. And, I want to have family that I'm close to. And I want to have friends that I'm close to. And I'm sick of being the lone wolf on the outskirts of society because I don't toe the party line. It's like, well, your consensus reality sucks. And the sleep you're in sucks. The not being awake sucks. I mean, I woke up in 2009 and realized that I was so angry, so, like, just needing to divorce myself from my own emotional lack of whatever. I mean, I was angry, I was depressed, I was sad, I was scared, I was so many different things, and happy wasn't even one of them. Joyful wasn't one of them. I lost the ability to laugh. I mean, I remember when I was in school, I'd crack up laughing at the dumbest shit. And that was me. That was me. I was laughing at funny, stupid stuff. And, at some point between 2003 and 2009, I lost the ability to laugh. Um, at least in a genuine way. I feel like I lost the ability to be happy. I lost the ability to be joyful. And all of a sudden, I mean, I go into an altered state of consciousness where I haven't slept for 5 days and completely like not in consensus reality anymore. I'm in another state of mind. And, of course that comes with wacky behavior that people don't care to deal with. And so they took me to the hospital and drugged me up till I was like catatonic. Yeah, they literally drugged me with Ativan and other psychotropic medication until I was almost comatose. And that's medicine for you. That's what they do. They don't ask you, well, why were you doing this? Why did you feel this way? What caused this behavior to happen? What were you going through? What were you thinking about? What were you trying to grapple with in your life? They don't ask that shit because they don't give a fuck. It's like, hey, we're all living human beings here, but some of us have power and some of us don't. That's essentially the lesson I learned in the psych ward, is that the crazy people, or the people being medicated, have no power and the doctors have all the power. The psychiatrists and their nurses have all the power. And they get to decide whether your behavior is too abnormal and you need to be sedated. And that's horrible. It's horrible. I mean, if you're being sedated for no reason other than somebody else's comfort or discomfort with your behavior, that to me is morally, like, really fucked up. And so, 4 days ago, I decided, I was like, I'm done with the high blood sugars. I'm done with the diabetes. I want to deal with it, but I want to also address the fact that it was probably not just heredity that caused it. I mean, because they have a warning on Abilify, one of the medications that I take, that you have to monitor a person's blood sugar and cholesterol levels when they're on the medication, because the medication is known to cause weight gain. The medication is known to fuck with your blood sugar levels. The medication is known to cause your cholesterol levels to get out of whack. And they found that with me. They did tests that said my blood sugar was too high, my A1C was too high. And it's like, well, why do I have to give up my physical health to stay quote unquote sane? I mean, I'd rather be a little outside of the box or miss the target when it comes to my thought process than have my body just completely fall apart on me and then my mind is just sitting there watching because, that's what the mind does. The mind observes. And I'd rather be a little off color than be completely like torn apart physically by these drugs. And so that's why I decided no more Abilify. And when it comes down to it, once I'm off the Abilify, I might also get off the Lexapro. I might just say fuck the antidepressant. Because at some point I have to learn to walk on my own. I have to learn to walk without these crutches. I have to learn to deal with my emotional status and say, look, these are the thought patterns that were running amok in my brain that caused me to be sad. These are the thought patterns that were running amok in my brain that caused me to be afraid. These are the thought patterns that I was taught by my parents that were insane that caused me to be insane. It's simple. It's like, when you're in your mind, it's all just thoughts. And what you think affects how you see the world, and how you see the world affects how you experience the world, and how you experience the world, it feeds back. It's a cycle. It's like, it's a feedback loop, or whatever you want to call it, how you see the world and how you think about things determine how you engage with reality. And this is just simple stuff. And the psychiatrists don't care to address that with their patients. They don't care to say, Well, maybe you need to consider thinking different thoughts. Maybe you need to consider cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectical behavior therapy or other kinds of therapies and healing modalities that don't involve drugging you till you're like completely not yourself. I mean, psychotropic. The word means to bring back a person to who basically it means to bring back a person's psyche to its original status. To bring yourself back to who you are, to remember who you are. And the way I've experienced it is that instead of bringing me back to myself, instead of like accepting who I was and why I was that way, the medication basically turned off the ability to be sad. It turned off the ability to be depressed. It turned off a couple things. And that wasn't necessarily bad given my predisposition towards those states of mind. But at the same time, instead of, feeling sad, I just felt nothing. And instead of feeling sad or manic or excited or anything, I just felt okay. I just felt gray. I just felt like colorless. I just felt like all the emotion had been drained out of my spirit, drained out of my psyche. And I didn't have the ability to connect with myself and other people in the same way anymore. And I think the one good thing the medication did was that it helped me give up my fear. It helped me realize, there's a world out there and you need to live in it because this is the world that we live in. I mean, you may not like consensus reality, but we all have to deal with it on some level. We all have to accept that there are certain standards. And if we can't or don't, then we hand our personal power over to the jailers, the judges, the people that lock people in psych wards, the people that medicate people and force them to be on medication. And here's the thing. I had a friend in this building who died from heart failure, from a heart attack. And I believe it was because of the medication that he was taking every week. I also recently, my brother passed away, my little brother. And I realized that he had a lot of mental struggles. I mean, he knew for himself that even his brainwave patterns were not the way other people's brainwave patterns were. He was constantly in a theta state, he said, and most people are usually in a beta state or alpha state, and he was constantly in this other kind of altered state because of the fetal alcohol effect that he went through, that he had to deal with in this life, and other issues that he was dealing with. And it was sad. He said the only way to get him back to a normal brainwave state or a beta state or alpha state was to think horrible thoughts. Thoughts that I wouldn't feel comfortable thinking. Thoughts that I probably thought but didn't like. Because sometimes, when you have a mental issue or depression or anxiety or fearfulness or whatever it may be, whatever the shrinks diagnose you with, intrusive thoughts can be part of that. And I was thinking that's like, I was mainly I have to say it had to do with social anxiety. I wasn't comfortable around other people. I wasn't comfortable around other people, and that made me think thoughts about lashing out. And I didn't like that. That was one of the things I really did not like. Is because I'm not a violent person. I don't lash out. And so what happened was that I got depressed and took it out on myself. And that's not a good situation either. You know, you have to live a life of balance when it comes down to it. And if you're not balanced, then you have to address that some way or somehow. And yes, I used medication to address that in the first part. But I don't intend to use medication forever because it's wreaking havoc on my body. It's making me sick. And I can't do the work I want to do in my life without my physical vessel being healthy. And I just feel like it's time. It's time to get healthy. It's time to work on myself physically and mentally, emotionally and spiritually, to come back to a point of balance where it's not all these things. It's not fear. It's not anxiety. It's not depression. It's not, whatever I was dealing with before. I mean, I've already accepted that, I've gotten used to living my life solitarily. And I've accepted that part of my life. I've accepted that I might not have a partner. I've accepted that my soulmate isn't out there. I've accepted that I don't have very many kindred spirits. I've accepted the loneliness that comes with the stigma of mental illness. I've accepted the loneliness that comes with the stigma of being physically disabled. I've accepted these things. And maybe people should say, oh, well, why accept it? Because you can change it somehow. And I just say, well, most people aren't evolved enough to understand a mental illness. Most people aren't evolved enough to understand that they judge people all the time based on their physical appearance. And God don't judge that way. Creator, source doesn't judge that way. Like, he doesn't say to the pretty girl in the room, you're pretty, I like you, better than I like the ugly person over there. Because the ugly person over there probably is smarter than you, has more book knowledge, more street smart knowledge, more life experience, more, they're just deeper people. And the pretty girl, well, she skates by on her looks, and eventually they're gonna go away, and she's gonna be like, what the fuck do I do with myself? And that's when she's gonna have her spiritual awakening. But anyway, I'll close up shop for now. But yeah, I just wanted to say these things. I just wanted to give them voice. Thanks for listening.